Hello, hello, hello. Good to see you again. Today we're going to be working on specimen cards that we're going to add to our Peacock envelope journal. And I have to tell you that I'm doing this as a voiceover because when I originally filmed this wonderful video, guess what I did? I edited it and erased my voice. Then I posted it to YouTube with no voice, so now I'm starting again. Okay, these specimen cards are going to be about 2 inches square, but we aren't going to measure them first by the square. We're going to measure them after we cut the hole. The inside is filled with a piece of plastic, and this will be reclaimed plastic. And then I have a see-through sticker I'm going to put on them of peacock feathers. The stickers were purchased at Hobby Lobby, I believe. Now, the way we're going to start this is with a heavier cardstock. You can use scrap. You can use pieces cut off of junk mail. Just whatever you want to use is fine. Now, I have a piece of cardstock here that I'm using. This is a piece of scrapbook paper, and it is a little heavier. It's not the bond paper. It's the heavier kind of cardstock. And what I'm going to do is fold it over about 2 inches square, or about 2 inches over, maybe 2.5 inches. And then I'm going to use a variety of different paper punches. You'll see here I have a rectangle, I have a circle, and I have corners. There's my circle one. And we're going to start by punching holes. And what I do is I take my folded paper. I'm going to start with the square hole punch. This is about a 1 inch square, maybe just a little more. And all of my hole punches were purchased at different craft stores. A few of them were purchased at thrift stores. I've not been lucky enough to run into a yard sale with all these kind of supplies, but I still hold hope. Now what I'm going to do is you can see this little circle one that I'm holding up. It has plastic in the middle. We start by punching the hole, then we add the plastic, then we round the corners, we ink everything, and then we finish up. So I start with the folded edge and I lay my punch over it. I push the paper as far in as it will go and I punch a hole. Now I've got this little square that was leftover scrap. It's a little harder to work with, but you can stick it in a hole punch and punch it too. And I just punched it in the rectangular hole, and I did that. I'm pulling out my scraps now out of the little holder, and I'm laying them aside because they can be used for something else. I like to use those little scraps on clusters sometimes. I like to pull the scraps out as I work because if I forget, then the next time around I go to use it and it won't work as well. But you see, you can use those little scraps in clusters and as decorations later. Particularly, they work nice to set off words and things like that. So now I have 2 squares. If you'll notice this one, I've already cut to about 2 inches square, and I've put the rectangular hole in it, and that hole lines up just about perfectly. It's not perfectly centered, but here is how I make sure it is. I just take a scrap of paper and I mark the edge of my cutout and the edge of my specimen card, and then I lay it on the other side against the edge of my cutout, mark the edge of the specimen, and I'm going to mark all the sides to find out whether or not I've got it centered. If I haven't got it centered, then I'll trim it. 2 of the sides on this one are good, and the other 2 sides I'm just going to very gently trim with my scissors and bring it out to where it's now a fairly centered little design. And I'm going to do the same with this one that I cut out of the larger sheet of paper. I'm still going to just measure from that bottom edge That's that one measurement that I can't change. It's just how the machine is set up, how the punch is set up. And I'm going to use it to mark the other edges. I could make the other edges wider if I want and have one narrower edge. That's fine. My OCD makes me want to get them square, though, and all the sides even. So hang with me. If that's not what you want to do, that's fine. Now I'm going to use my ruler on this one because I want to make sure I get my lines fairly straight, and I have to cut off a good bit. So I want to make sure my lines are fairly straight. I prefer when I'm drawing lines to use my see-through ruler because I can also kind of spot check to make sure that I'm straight and level. Now, if I want, I can use my ruler. I want to show you this on my ruler. If you'll notice on the ruler, there are two sides. My ruler has a piece of cork on the back of it. The trick with using the ruler is if you're going to draw with a marker, and you'll notice it's the same on this ruler. If you're going to draw with the marker and the ruler is flat against the paper, it's going to smear. Now here I've put it flat against the paper, it will smear. But if you look, that ruler is not flat. It has a little raised edge. And if you flip it over, you'll have the edge just slightly up off the paper. And then when you draw on it, it won't smear. I wanted to show you that because sometimes I use a marker to cut my paper if a pencil would be hard to see, and I don't want that marker to smear. So I always flip my ruler. One side of it will lay flat against the paper, and the other side will come up and leave just a little bit of air between the paper and the ruler. That's the side you want to use when you're drawing, particularly with the marker that will smear. Now, I've cut this out, and I'm going to use my corner cutter. And I'm going to just snap out my corners. I like rounded corners. If you like square corners, it's certainly a step you can leave off. For some reason, I just like the rounded corners. I think it makes it look more finished. So I'm rounding the corners on my two specimen holders. Now that one's not wanting to fit in and cut, so I may go to a larger corner on it. You have to be careful to get them well into the corner, kind of jiggle them, make sure they're in there. If they're not in squarely, they won't cut well. And I think I'm just going to go with the larger corner cutter on this one. Sometimes it depends on the weight of the paper, but I wasn't getting a good cut, so I think I'll go back and do the larger corner. This particular cutter has 3 different size corners. And I don't use one over the other. I just use whichever one works best for what I'm working with. Now we're ready for the next step. Get rid of my crumbs. I'm not normally a neat and organized person, so I have to make myself clean things up as we go. And the next thing I'm going to do is add this plastic. And where I get my plastic from, lots of different places. This is just recycled plastic off of sticker packages from the Dollar Tree. Whenever I open a package of stickers, I keep the plastic. Whenever I open anything that's in a plastic wrapper, I keep it. If you don't have recycled plastic like this, just use you can use a paper protector. You can buy those at any office supply store, Walmart, any place like that. Now I opened this up, and I'm just going to hold my little card up there to get an idea because I'm going to cut it. But I'm going to cut 2 pieces. So even though I've opened up this plastic, I fold it over to cut because I want 2 pieces. And when possible, I cut along the fold so that those 2 pieces stay together. It just makes it easier to work. If you don't have a fold to work along, just cut 2 separate pieces. It'll work fine. Now you see that's going to fit over my hole, but I don't want it quite as large as my whole slide. So what I'm going to do is trim a little off the edges here and make sure that it's going to fit inside my cute little shape. Now in here, I'm going to use scraps of double stick tape to hold these, and I'm not going to worry about using a crafter's variety, just any double stick tape, because I'm also going to glue this. Double stick tape is just going to hold things in place while I'm working. And cut the piece for the other one. I know a lot of people like to mass make things, and I might mass cut out my specimen slides, but I probably wouldn't put the plastic in them until I'm ready to use them. And the reason for that is it's kind of fussy. You have to do each one separately. You have to make each one has to be cut to fit that particular slide. So I probably would not mass make these. I might mass make the little cutouts and put them aside using scrap. And then when I need some, I'll come back. Now here I'm going to take the double stick tape, and if I tear a piece that's too big, I'm just going to lay it on the edge, and I'm going to double it over. Now another thing you can do is lay it on the edge and let it stick off the edge. Don't worry about it, because when you put your plastic down on there, you can then fold it over the top of the plastic and it will hold the whole slide together. Next step is going to be to just fit your piece of plastic in there. Make sure you fit your folded edge so that it's against the fold. Now if I need to trim off some, this is the time I can do it. I can wait till I glue it all together and trim it then too. It doesn't matter which way. But before you close your slide, you have to put your sticker in. The whole reason for the plastic is to hold that sticker in and protect it. Now, do you have to use a sticker? No. You could use, those little decorative cutouts that have the little butterflies and sprigs of leaf or dragonflies in them. Well, you could put some of that in there. You could cut it out of scrapbook paper and put it in there. You could put a picture out of a magazine in that slide, and you don't have to put the plastic on it unless you just want to. Another thing you can do is you can put like a tiny pressed flower in there. Maybe you're out on a vacation and you find a pretty little flower and you press it in a book and you stick it in there. You could do that. You can buy pressed flowers at the craft stores and put those in there. I've done that before too. It just has to be thin. It can't be thick. Now I'm laying my plastic in my second specimen holder right here. And I'm going to cut it just a little bit because it was sticking over an edge that I didn't like. Again, that's my OCD showing, so, just ignore me. I get a little obsessive sometimes. I'm going to lay my plastic in there now, making sure to lay it down smooth. I'm going to trim off the edges of my plastic where it's larger than my slide. Sometimes it's easier to cut the plastic too big and then just trim it off when you're done making the slide. That works fine. It becomes a preference, whatever it is you like to do. The larger piece, make sure that you don't cut one too small and get frustrated because you have to go back and cut another piece. So cutting it just a little larger is fine. And you always go back and trim it later. Now I'm cutting around the edges where I had my little circle. I'm not going to put it back in the corner cutter for this because the plastic doesn't cut well in the corner cutter, so I'm just going to fussy cut it by hand. Okay, now the stickers. I'm using a little pointy tool. This is something I got at the Dollar Tree. You get 2 of them in a package. And I'm just going to use the little pointy tool because these clear stickers on clear plastic are hard to pick up. I just find that makes it a little easier to use that pointy tool. I'll lay my sticker where I want it. Then I'm going to close my plastic down over it. Well, I decided I didn't like it. Let me try again. You can peel these up off the plastic if you're careful. That's another reason to put them inside the specimen protector because those plastic ones can be peeled up later. And this way they're sealed and they're not going to get damaged. And it's just a little decoration to add. Now this isn't something I journal on, but if you can imagine taking a trip and picking up little things that you could put in these specimen protectors and include in your journal if you're doing a trip journal. I've got some tiny seashells I picked up on my trip to Florida this summer, back in May when I was camping in the Everglades. And I went over to some of the Keys in Naples, and I picked up some seashells. And I'm going to try to put the teeny tiny seashells in these specimen protectors and see how they'll do. Now I've got my clips. These clips are from Dollar Tree. You buy 6 of them at a time. Go buy a bunch of them. I use them all the time. And what I'm going to do here is I am going to put my glue around the outer edge of this, and I'm putting glue underneath the plastic where it's not double stick taped down, and on top of the plastic so that it gets a good glue. Then I'm going to simply close my little cover, and I'm going to put clips on it because I want it to have a good solid seal. And even though it will stay just as is, I find if I put my little clippies on it for a while, then it seals really well. So I just put these little clips, have rubber tips on them. They don't damage your paper, and I just slide them on there and set them aside for 5 or 10 minutes, and then they're perfectly sealed. Part of the reason I do it with this particular project is because it takes longer for that glue to dry on the plastic edges. Where you've got that clear plastic in there, the glue can take a little longer to dry, so I make sure to use it. Now, the glue I'm using here is, once again, I'm a Dollar Tree clean today. It is the Crafter Square Clear Craft Glue from Dollar Tree. I use different kinds of glue, and I know that there are some great glues out there. And, you know, use what you want to use. Don't use what I use. I pick my glue more because I can squeeze the bottle than anything else. We're going to let these dry for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we're going to slide them into our journal, and we'll show them again in our next video where we do a flip through of the journal. I hope you have enjoyed this, and I hope to see you again in my next video. Bye now.